Hello, everyone, and welcome to our lesson. Today, we are going to be talking about one of the fundamental lessons of Japanese that really throws people for a loop when they first get into it. And we are picking up off of our Te form lesson that we did last week. And Te form is a tricky form that a lot of people have problems with. And let me just real fast before we jump in, let me show you some of the things that we have inside of Renshuu that might help you. Now, if you're looking something up, for example, we were practicing a little while before, and let's say you look up the word kaku, and you're like, what's the te form for that one? I can't remember. Inside the dictionary, and actually anywhere words pop up inside of Renshuu, if you tap right here, that's the verb type for it. It will give you a full list of all the conjugations you will ever need to know. And fifth from the top is the te form. So you'll have this te form if you need to get a quick lookup. It's always available there. Additionally, this is a relatively new feature, so some people may not know about this. I'm going to jump to my desktop real quick. We actually have special conjugation schedules to help you practice practice with this as you're going. Now, my dashboard has a ton of stuff on it because I'm always testing Renshuu. But if you go down to the bottom, underneath all your current schedules, and you go to manage your schedules, and then all schedules, that would be all the ones that Renshuu has prepared for you. You'll notice right down here, there's a section that says verb and adjective conjugations. Try jumping into this. And you'll see I already have the verb one added, but if I didn't, you'd be able to tap this. And I'll go ahead and show you the adjective conjugation one as well. But once you add one of these, it will create that schedule for you. And in adding the materials, it lets you choose which conjugation forms you want to study. Now, some of them are Renshuu Pro only, but a lot of the core ones are available to everyone. And this will let you practice that conjugation for all the different forms. If it's verbs, all the different verb endings, and it comes up normally for review each day, just like your words, your kanji, your hiragana, whatever it happens to be. So please give that a try if you're interested. Now, let's get back into the lesson. Like I said, we were talking about te form last week, and this week we are going to jump into one of the key uses of the te form. In fact, I'd say it's probably the most commonly used one. We talked about the command form a little bit last time, if you're just telling someone to do something, or we used it to describe linking. If you are taking two verbs and say I drank and I ate, you can use the te form to glob those two verbs together. This time, we're going to be talking about what's usually referred to as the te-iru form. Te-iru is, the dictionary form of it. Iru is a verb that's getting attached onto the te form before it. And then imasu is the polite form. And we're still sticking with polite forms. Now, we need to talk about the different kinds of verbs that exist. Now, specifically, there's three kinds that we are going to use, or three categories that we'll use. The existence verbs are ones that we hit much earlier. There's basically two of them. There's aru and there's iru. And those are the ones we use to describe when we say, oh, there's a book on the table, there's a cat in the car, there are three people inside of the box, who knows why. And those are your existence verbs. We will not be dealing with those today. We will be talking about activity and change verbs. Activity is also called action verbs sometimes, depending on who you're talking to, what you're reading. And an activity or an action verb is, they're things that you do, physically. They're things that you use your body to do. They're things that you are active in doing. I am currently speaking. I'm sitting. I'm looking at the screen. These are all activities. These are all things that I'm doing now. Another way you can think about it is it's something that's done for a length of time. short or long. And so if you are, oh wait, let me jump back. Let me mention the other ones, and then we'll talk about how to split them up. Change verbs, these are the ones that people get a bit confused about because they're not quite as clear. A change verb is something that represents a change between two states. When I say state, I refer to a condition. Two that we're going to be mentioning later on, are okiru, to wake up, or for example, aku, to be open, or akeru, to open a door. So okiru is a change because it's changing from two different states, from the I'm asleep to I'm awake. Okiru, the verb itself, refers to the line between those two states. You're either asleep or you're awake. It's a 1 or a 0. And changing from one to the other is that okiru. Same with opening a door. A door is either open or it's closed. Now, you might say, well, it could be partly opened or it could be halfway open. Those are all still forms of open. So is it closed or is it not closed? These are change verbs. We're going to get into this more. And those are used in a different way with the te-iru form. So you're probably already confused. So let's take these broad concepts and drill into them a little bit. How do we tell which is which? So an action or an activity verb is one that, like I said, you can add a duration of time to the verb and it still makes sense. You can still say it and say, that works. So, for example, if you're talking about eating, you say, well, is eating an action? Now, this one's pretty obvious, but you might say, well, can you eat for an hour? Yes. Does that make sense as a sentence? I eat for an hour. Yes, it does. So it's an action. In the same way that you are all listening to this event, this Discord event, that's an action. Or playing a game, or working, or using Renshuu. These are all actions that you could be doing for seconds, you could be doing for hours. If you're like me and you're lost in the world of Factorio, the game, many, many hours, but these are all actions. Now, with these change verbs, you can't put a time on them. You can't say I was changing from asleep to awake for 10 minutes, or for an hour. Change verbs are, as far as Japanese is concerned, and I would argue in English as well, they are instantaneous. So we're not talking about, your eyes open up, but you're still in bed. You still can't move anything, and you're still thinking, I wish I could go back to sleep. By that point, you're awake. You might say in English, you're conscious. You're not fully awake and active and moving around, but your body is no longer asleep. So it's an instantaneous change. You can't okiru for 10 minutes, at least not in Japanese. Same with opening a door. For all intents and purposes, the door is closed or open, and then opening the door, it takes a split second for it to no longer be closed. Now, you might take 5 seconds to slowly open the door all the way, but it's already open. You're just making it more open. A couple more examples to give you. I think we'll hit on these later on. But we talk about getting married. And the verb for getting married is kekkon suru. And again, this is a change of state. Now, the wedding ceremony itself might be an hour or multiple hours, but there's an instant in that ceremony where you go from not being married to married. And that verb is used for that change only. Just that split second when you're like, I'm no longer single, I'm married. The same thing happens with, this is a bit of a darker topic, but it's worth mentioning, with dying, with shinu. You can't, grammatically, in Japanese, you cannot be dying in the sense of you were getting closer to death. We would use a different verb for that, but in the sense of changing, the word shinu refers to that instant from they're alive to they're not alive anymore. And so it's a change verb. It's going from one state to another. As you can guess, these activity verbs are much more common. And so let's talk about those first. So we're going to go with the one we mentioned earlier, which is to eat. So we're going to take the te form, and then we're going to add this te-iru, is we're adding that iru form to the back end of it. And here we're using the polite form, of course, but we have tabeteimasu, tabeteimasen, and tabeteimashita. And we can use this to describe an action. Again, we're talking about actions, activities, an action that's in progress. How do we do this in English? We usually use the ing form. You might also call it the present, well, not necessarily present, but the progressive form. I am eating, I am sleeping, I am typing out a comment in Discord, I am doing something. So we often see, this is a bit of an oversimplification, but we often see the te-iru form in Japanese referred to as the ing form. And that is one of the forms. It's just not the only one. So you can say one of the jobs of te-iru or te-imasu is to show something that's happening now. So let's look at these. If you are eating right now, which I wish I was, I'm a little hungry, but some of you might be snacking on something while you're listening to this. So in that case, you could say you are tabeteimasu. I am eating. Now, you could flip it around, and this would apply to me. You know, if you're not eating right now, you could switch it to imasen and say tabeteimasen. I am not eating. Now, one more quick example. We can also change it to the past tense. And if you want to say, I was eating, you know, why, for example, someone might say, why didn't you answer my phone call? And you say, well, I was eating. Now, just like in English, you wouldn't say, well, I ate. I ate, so I couldn't answer. No, you would say, I was eating. And so tabeteimashita refers to, you know, that past progressive. I was ing. So we're going to practice this a little bit, but let me point out that when you use the te form like this, note that it's always the last verb in the chain. You know, we've got two verbs here. We've got taberu. We've got this iru, this helper verb that we're using to describe the ing. You only change that last verb. Te itself doesn't have past or present. It doesn't have a tense built into it. We're only changing what's on the end. So it's the te form plus iru, and whatever that happens to be. So I'd like to practice a little bit right now. And I want you to tell me what you are doing right now. Now, of course, you can make up and say whatever you want. You don't have to say, you can say, I want to use this verb, you can say, I'm playing soccer, and you can do that. Now, we are still in the Japanese basics lessons, so I'm not looking for long sentences. You're free to do so if you want. But if you want to say, if you want to use the same sentence that's on the page right now and say tabeteimasu, that's a full sentence in Japanese. Now, if you want to expand it a little bit more and say, I'm eating curry, you could say this, kare o tabeteimasu. Someone said they're playing games. Sure, that's a great sentence. Right now, we're just focusing on using these two verbs together. And so we don't need to worry too much about everything else in the sentence. We don't need anything too crazy. Now, the one thing I ask is that if you're typing out an answer, awesome. But please try to stick to kana answers. Or if you use hiragana, if you use kanji, please put the hiragana afterwards. We have a lot of people that haven't started their kanji studies yet, and we want to make sure they can take advantage of, the sentence or the example that you're putting out. And yeah, if you want to use the Kalchan bot to get the furigana on there, that's fine. So someone is sleeping, which is awesome. You could sleep and study at the same time. I wish I could do that. Someone else was eating a croissant. Someone else is drawing. Someone looks like they are. And yes, for the person that just add the kanji hiragana, that's perfect. Thank you. Someone else, it sounds like they are speaking. Hanashite-imasu. Someone is cleaning. Soji shite-imasu. That works. That's perfectly okay. You can also do this. You can put the O in there. Although with a lot of those verbs that have O, it's like a noun O suru, those suru verbs, you often see the O dropped. And so both of those would be fine. So we've got people cleaning, we've got people eating, studying, sleeping, speaking, drawing, playing games. Great. Watching anime. Awesome. So you're all doing great. You're doing great. Let's flip it. Let me ask you to do something a little different. Now, if you're still typing, please finish typing. I never want to stop someone in the middle of typing. If you are working, it would be, so hataraku is, the main one. Hataraite imasu. So you're so close. Switch that de to a te, the d to a t, and you're good. Now let's flip and let's use that the second form we have. Tell me something you're not doing right now. So right now, I am not so-and-so. All you need to do is take that imasu, switch it out to the imasen, the negative form, and you've got it. But what's something you're not doing? I already complained about it, so I'll say I am not eating. And I finished it, and I haven't gotten myself a second cup yet, so I am not drinking coffee at the moment. Again, you can see while I do these lessons, you can see where my head is. Just a small correction. The te form of neru, to sleep, is nete. If you are not having fun, so to have fun is this one, tanoshimu. So I'll leave it up to you to take that and extend it out. Someone's not dancing, which is not good. Everyone should be dancing all the time. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds to finish up what you're doing. The person that just typed out, if you were to say I will not, you're kind of stating your will, your intention. I will not write a report. Then you can use kakimasen. It's more stating, what you are not going to do. If you're saying I'm not writing it, you would use this te form, so kaiteimasen. I am not writing it. And I know some of you that know a little bit more Japanese, you're probably making the link in your head. Hey, we've got those other two words, mada, yet, which we can say I'm not writing my report yet, or I'm not eating yet. And we will get to that in a later lesson. But just a bit at a time. Okay, but some excellent sentences, and for people that are making mistakes, I want you to be happy with yourself. Specifically, not because I want people to make mistakes and to fail, but a mistake plus correction sticks in your head much better than just getting it right off the bat. Those mistakes, especially if you feel a little bad about it, it's not like I should feel bad, but people take both positive and negative emotions and they bind them to memories. And so I've told this story before, but it's been a couple years, so I'll say it again. I was in Japanese class. This was 20 years ago, and we were practicing kanji reading. And the teacher would hold up a flashcard, and they'd say, "What is this?" And they put this card up, which the reading for this is oboeru. Does anyone know what the meaning of this word is? Before I continue with my story, it can mean to memorize. It usually means to remember, but to memorize, remember, it's somewhere in between those two. It's like to have information and retain it. So it means both of those. Yes. So they held up the kanji form. And they said, "Maikeru-san," and I looked, I couldn't remember. But I could remember how to say, "I don't remember." And so I said this. I said, "Oboete imasen," using the form that we're learning right now. It's like, I don't remember. And I'm sure the teacher laughed. And I felt like an idiot, but I never made that mistake again. And so I took that memory, even 20 years ago. That was, 6 seconds of my life, 20 years ago, but it's still stuck in my head. And the learning that came with it is still there. And so I always say, yeah, you might, probably not in these lessons, but you might be a little bit embarrassed or a little red in the face when these things happen. But grab onto those and say, "Man, that was embarrassing." Say that to yourself, and that will stick it further into your head so you don't forget that bit of Japanese. Okay, let's keep going. We have a lot more and not enough time. There we go. This is probably the least used of the three forms we're talking about today, but I'd still like to talk about it. If you have a habitual action, an action that you do repeatedly. For example, let's talk about my son for a minute. He just started a programming class, which he really likes. It's amazing what they have to teach programming to young people these days. He's 7. And so he is learning. Let me type out the sentence for you. Now, the verb to learn is narau. So this is what I could use to describe my son. Programming o narattemasu. He is learning programming. At 7, I know, he's not, I love him, of course, but he's not a genius or anything. I think he is, but that's just because I'm his father. But they have stuff. It's called Scratch, and I don't want to jump into a different topic, but they have so much available for youth now for programming. Anyway, sorry, back on topic. So I could use this to describe my son. And I could say, "Programming o narattemasu." And if you only knew what we learned just now, you might say, wait, he's studying now? Literally right now? He is studying programming now? No, he's in normal school now, probably doing kanji, actually, in his language class. So this is a habitual action, not a habit as in like a good habit or a bad habit, but something that happens on a repeated basis. Every week he goes to programming class. you can use the te-imasu form for that as well. So, programming o naratte masu. Not naratte. Yeah, naratte masu. He is learning programming. Not now. Although, if you didn't know any better, you might think it's now. And without context, it could go in either way. But since I've given you the context that he goes weekly, you'd say, oh, this is a habit. This is a planned, repeated activity that he's doing. So you could say, maishu sakka o shitemasu, to say I practice soccer, or I do soccer. Sorry, not practice. I do soccer every week. You could also say, ocha o nondemasu. Now this one I feel is maybe not the best example. It did Renshuu, but maybe not the best example, because usually we don't talk about drinking tea as a habit that often, but some people do. You might say, oh, do you drink coffee? And you say, oh no, I don't drink coffee, but I drink tea. And you could respond with ocha o nondemasu, and you say, I drink tea. And in English, we would actually say, I drink tea, if you were to translate this sentence. And this is where some of the confusion comes in. But if you say ocha o nondemasu, you're saying I drink tea, but you're not talking about now. You're saying this is a normal thing that I do. Maybe it's every morning, maybe it's every evening, every week, who knows? That's why I strongly recommend to you that you do not take the te-iru or the te-imasu form and say, this equals ing, because that's too limiting. I prefer, and if you've been doing my lessons for a while, you've heard this, I prefer talking about jobs. Like, what's the job of the te-imasu form? And it has a few jobs. One job is to show the ing form, the progressive form, something that's happening at the moment. Our second job is here to show a habitual, or if it's easier for you to remember, a repeated action, a regularly repeated action. Sure, yeah, you could call it that. You could say it's overloading. Yeah, I'll go with that. But it has multiple jobs, just like lots of particles have, honestly, too many different jobs. It's not just this means this. So try and stay away from a translation of this and think of it as a job. Which job is it doing at this given time? Now, we're not going to practice this one because I want to jump into the last one. This is the construct itself is as simple as the other ones. We're just talking about the te form plus imasu. But this one can be the hardest for some people to, wrap around. So let's talk about this, and we're going to end our lesson after we discuss this. We're going to talk about those change verbs. And we talked about okiru before, to wake up. But let's link this with what we're doing before. So, quick question. This should be obvious, but let's see if you can answer in Japanese. Before you wake up, what are you doing? Before you wake up, what are you doing? Can you answer in Japanese using the Japanese that we just learned? We're talking about ing. Before you wake up, you are, and someone just typed it out. They use the kanji, but you can tap on the little kalchan below to see what's below it. Netemasu. So let's say that's stage 1. You are sleeping. You are netemasu. Next, you wake up. When you wake up, again, as far as, you could get into linguistic debates, but as far as we're concerned, waking up is an instantaneous process. Not the getting out of bed, but the going from asleep to not asleep is instantaneous. So, stage 1, you are sleeping. You are netemasu. Stage 2, you wake up. When you wake up, you okimashita. I woke up. That's how you would translate that. I woke up. And after that, you are awake. When we have a change verb, so change, okiru is a change verb, we can use the te-imasu form to describe what happens after that change. So, okita, again, okita, well, that's the casual, so we're not going to talk about the casual right now. We're sticking to polite forms. Oh, and actually, let me make a quick edit to the Discord. So I've typed them out, and other people have typed things into the chat. So they've gotten spread out. So give me just a sec. Let me type something into the chat real fast. And then I think it will help illustrate this much more clearly. So the person typing, if you can please hold off on typing until I get this done, just so I have everything lined up. A few more seconds. Okay, look at, behold my glorious timeline. So you can see a timeline. There's three things. There's this one, and that's happened. That's your sleeping. I'm sleeping. Nette-imasu. You're sleeping for 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, whatever. After you stop sleeping, you wake up. It's an instantaneous action. It happens. It's a single mark on that timeline. Okimashita. You wake up. After you wake up, you are awake. Okite-imasu. See how the change verb is right in the middle? It's because it's changing from 1 to 3. It's changing from asleep to awake. Okiru is a change. I know I'm repeating it, but just to get into your head, from asleep to awake. We are therefore using the te-imasu form to show what happens after that change. After you wake up, and in English, you would say this. I am awake. And again, this is why we can't say te-imasu equals ing. Because it does, but just for a limited number of situations. Here, te-imasu in both situations. For nette-imasu and okite-imasu, they're showing a state. They're showing what happens after, some, yes, you don't want to be I am awaking. So some of you might be thinking, oh wait, what happens here? So let me type that out one more time. And this will give you a little peek into the lives of family conversations in Japan, because we say this every night, my wife and I, or she does. I usually respond in English, but so look at this. Let's take the full cycle, a full day of waking up and sleeping. So you are sleeping initially. 1, 2, and 3 are the same. You're sleeping. You have that. Whoops. Let's try that again. Discord is not working. I don't know why. There we go. I guess that's close enough. So you're sleeping. Nette-imasu. You have that change. Okimashita. And after that, you're awake. Okite-imasu. When our kids go to sleep at night, that instant they go to sleep, that change from being awake to going to sleep, nemashita. So nemashita can refer to that instantaneous change. So if I am with the kids and putting them to sleep, and they went to sleep, I go down to my wife and I say nemashita. That doesn't mean that they're done sleeping. They're obviously, they just went to sleep. This is used to show that change from awake to asleep. Nemashita. And now, what's the state that they're currently in? They are neteimasu. We've really focused on this one example. So let's give you a few more examples to help show you what it's like. We mentioned marriage before, which the verb for marriage, or to get married rather, is a bit longer. Kekkonsuru. And so what do you think? Let me give you a quick question. Before you get married, how can we write this verb to show I am not married? The screen in front of you, if you're looking at the screen share, that shows the state after you get married. So how do we say before you get married? It's a very simple change. Oh, perfect. First answer. Now, I see two answers that came up. Let's talk about those two real fast. The first one, I'm going to copy and paste real fast. The first one, someone said, kekkon shite imasen. I am not married. Remember, we're talking about a state, or we're talking about a change. This is a change verb. Kekkon suru represents a change from not being married to getting married. So to say, kekkon shite imasen, it means I am not married. Now someone else, interestingly, although you're hearing it with more and more frequency in this age, more than likely, if you say kekkon shimasen, you are stating your intention. I'm not going to get married. I will not get married. And you can use that with the same verbs we were using before. Neru can show a change. So if you say this, nemasen, you're not saying I'm not sleeping, you're saying I will not sleep. Now, it sounds strange just by itself. Usually you have a bit more language, like I will not sleep yet. I'm still playing this game. Or I have no intention of going to sleep. I have homework to do. Something like that. You cannot say I am not married that way. Because remember, marriage is a state. So you're either before that state, you're not married or you are. If you're not married, you would say kekkon shite imasen. That's the only way you can say it. You could also say I'm single, like I'm a bachelor or bachelorette, whatever, with a different verb. But if we're sticking to this verb, kekkon shite imasen. Masen is usually showing it. I don't want to say this is a rule that you can apply to all uses of masen, but it usually shows the will or intention of someone. So if you say kekkon shimasen, it's like I'm not going to get married. If you say ikimasen, I will not go. That's not a 100% rule, but that's often the case. But very good question. So let's use now pretend we have that timeline from before. We have our first date, I'm not married. And then when you, whatever happens to be, when you kiss the bride, kiss the groom, kiss the partner, whatever, that instant that you become married, kekkon shimashita. And now the change has happened. If someone asks me, are you married? Which they don't. That's kind of a strange question. But if they say, are you married? Kekkon shite imasu. It's showing a state. It's not an action. You're not like, I am marrying right now. That's not what's happening. You're describing the state after the change. Let me give you a few more examples to wrap this up. If you talk about a store that's open, open is aku. And so the state of being open is aitemasu. Oh, is that door open? Yes, it's open. It's open right now. Aitemasu. That doesn't mean it's opening currently, like they're opening the door. It means it's open. You can go there and shop now. Same with a door. You could talk about a door being open. A few more examples. The opposite. If a door is closed, shimaru, then you could say, oh, the door is closed. Shimattemasu. And someone that just joined, your mic is on. You might want to turn it off. Thank you. So aitemasu is open. And you don't say is opening. The door is opening. That's not the case. Or the store is opening. It's the store is open. The door is open. The door is closed. Shimattemasu. If you say, for example, the lights are on, the verb that you use for that is tsuku. And so if you say, hey, are the lights on? Yeah, the lights are on. Tsuitemasu. Again, there's no ing in here. We're just showing a state after a change. What was the change? The change was going from not on to on. The door was open and went to close. It was closed and went to open. These are all changes that we're talking about. Lastly, and I always do mention this, especially because of its popularity with a very specific meme that's been around for all too long. Actually, no, it's not that tsuku. It's this one. And the way I remember it's this one is, yeah, there are a lot, is I see that kanji as a pot on a fire, and you've turned the fire on. The same way that you might turn the lights on or the electricity on. So that's how I think of it. But you usually see it with without the kanji anyway. So there's that. It's usually in hiragana. So we have this meme, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Warning, I don't recommend using oh my. Just know that it exists. But this, death, again, is a change between living and not living. Death itself is, again, as far as the grammar is concerned, as far as our sentences are concerned, we're talking about that moment when the person's no longer alive. So let's go back to our timeline that we've kept using. What's number one? Number one is you are alive. You are ikitemasu. And then let's just say what death are we talking about today? Kao-chan gained sentience, decided we were not good enough for it, and world's over. And so there's that moment when Kao-chan, I guess, picks up a pan and hits you, and you're gone. Shinimashita. Shinimashita is referring to the instant. It's a change. So, if after that, shindemasu. This is referring to someone who has passed away. This is the state after death, which is they are dead, or we usually use more roundabout language. They've passed away. They're no longer with us, or what have you. So here, number two refers to the instant. So if you want to talk, if you're talking to someone in conversation, hopefully this doesn't come up too often, but it does if you are a gamer. And you say, oh, I was playing and I died. And, you're talking about the moment that your link and you threw the bomb too close to where you were and you blew yourself up. And you're like, shinimashita. You're referring to that instant. Three, though, is not very commonly used outside of that meme, but let's go back to the game situation. I think that's the most common. Let's say you're playing a co-op game and you're with a team and one of your team members, they died and they can't get back. You might use shindemasu to say they are dead. You might, because you're describing, oh, why is that person not here? You can say, well, it's because they're dead. Shindemasu. If you say, well, what happened to Michael? Why isn't he playing? And you want to say, well, he died. You want to focus on that action or that moment, that change. You'd use shinimashita. Oh, yes. For those of you that are not familiar, we went through a Pokemon stage. He's out of it. He's completely into Zelda right now. But I couldn't. It took a long time to convince my children that Pokemon, they just pass out when they lose a battle. He kept on saying, oh, my Pokemon died. I'm like, no, son. He didn't die. He's just asleep. But yes, so we use to jump off of this topic and go back to what we were doing. We use this te-iru to talk about the state. Now, here's a really interesting one that I don't hear that often, but you do hear it sometimes. Look at this one. This is interesting. Tomodachi wa uchi ni kitemasu. Now, this is using the verb kuru, which is to come. And this does work. Tomodachi wa uchi is house, or your house specifically. Tomodachi wa uchi ni kitemasu. That change has already happened. They came to your house. Before, they hadn't come. Now they've come. They're here. And you can describe that state of them being here. Now, you could also just say, they're here at my house. But, and you could say, Tomodachi wa uchi ni imasu. There are friends in my house. But that doesn't have as much information. Like, you don't know, when did they come? Have they always been here? This one has that kuru built into it. So you're talking about the change from them not being here to they are now here. They are now at my house. Tomodachi wa uchi ni kitemasu. And to jump back to the question, shinde iru, that's the casual form, which we haven't gotten to yet in our lessons, but we stick with the polite form for a while before we switch into the casual form. They're both very useful and both used every day, but we're not quite there yet. Anyway, the te-iru form is expansive, and it covers three rather distinct uses, only one of which you've probably heard before now, which was the ing form. But we talked about using it to represent the habitual pattern or habitual actions or a repeated action, something you do on a regular basis, as well as the states. The door is open, the store is closed, I am married, he is asleep, they are awake. And you can use the te-imasu for any of these. I definitely recommend, going back and looking at this lesson if you need to in the future, or if you're inside of Renshuu, and if you ever go up here to the dictionary button, you go to grammar, and if you look up te-iru, all three of them are in here. And when you go and you tap on this link, you will get more explanation as well as a lot more examples. Most of them with audio as well. So hopefully that'll help you. This video will be up later on inside of Renshuu for you to view in case you need it. But thank you so much for coming today. It was a lot of material. And so if you don't have a full grasp on it yet, that's okay. In fact, that's probably normal. You don't have to go from 0 to 100 comprehension after a single lesson. But if you're a step closer than you were before, then you should feel good about that. You should, embrace that progress. Sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's a little. Anyway, thank you so much for coming, and I will see you next time.